Welcome to CivilNet. My guest is Professor Ervand Abrahamian of New York. Professor Abrahamian has been associated with, either as a student or as a scholar, with nearly every major institution in the world: Oxford University, Princeton University, Columbia University. He teaches at the City University of New York and is known as one of the preeminent specialist scholars of Iran, pre-revolution Iran, post-revolution Iran. Professor Abrahamian, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
The timing is perfect. This is a year when Iran, I don't know when Iran is not in the news, but this is a year when Iran is certainly in the news in two very different contexts. One is the continuing standoff over Iran's potential nuclear capacity, and the other, of course, are the presidential elections coming up in June. Let's start with the first one. And to an Armenian scholar of Iran, I don't need to explain that anything military or drastic that happens in and around Iran will be equally catastrophic for Armenia. And so for us, following the standoff over the nuclear issue is very, very important. And to tell you the truth, we don't get it. We don't know where it's going. We don't know if, being an election year, things are going to be more acute. Can you help us see through this?
I think actually it's now become very clear what's going to happen. The last few years, there's always been talk of war bombing Iran. And that's why, unfortunately, Iran's been in the news so much. And I think in the next few years, Iran will recede from the news because I think the nuclear issue is near being resolved.
And resolved means?
Resolved in a good way. I think Obama came in clearly with a much more realistic policy than the Bush administration had been. And also, of course, if Romney was elected, there would have been a real danger of war. But this administration is clear-cut that they're not going to go to war. And I think where there is a possibility of compromise is that this administration is willing to permit Iran have some enrichment, as long as the enrichment is not near weaponizing degree. And this is actually what Israel doesn't want and the Bush administration did not want. But the new administration really is willing to go that far, although it doesn't openly say that. But between the lines, it's clear that they accept Iran having a nuclear program as long as it's not a nuclear weapons program.
Which is essentially what Iran has been saying all along, that
Exactly.
It is my right to have that.
Right. And Iran has always insisted it's not weaponizing. So there's not really an issue as long as the US accepts Iran's right to have enrichment and Iran gives assurances they're not weaponizing, then it's settled, basically.
Should we worry that an Israel and a Turkey that have for a few years now been at odds with each other are now apparently making up and reconciling? Should we worry about that, the potential impact of that on, again, further sharpening the issues around Iran, or no?
No, I don't think it makes any difference. I think the Turkish improvement with relations with Israel is under U.S. pressure, and I don't think really they figure Armenia in that, basically.
No, they won't, but how will it affect the nuclear give and take?
No, it won't. I think because the U.S. administration has got the priority of actually resolving the nuclear issue. And of course, to resolve it is either war or some settlement. And since this administration doesn't want war, they're going to settle.
Does the U.S. administration or the West in general, do they appreciate the significance, the importance of the fact that Iran has been so carefully neutral in the standoff between Armenians and Azerbaijan? We, of course, appreciate it a great deal because it would have been catastrophic any other way. Do they appreciate Iran's neutral stance?
They don't know it. This is actually a fault of the media. I think the Iranian Revolution, the Islamic Republic has been always couched in the whole concept of religious fundamentalism, fanaticism, and of course, if you have that premise that Iran is basically driven by foreign policy, by some sort of crazy religious movement, then having relations with a Christian neighbor doesn't fit in. So what I think happens in the United States is that's not discussed. And I often talk to actually very knowledgeable people, and they don't believe it. They say, how can this be? Because it doesn't fit into their picture. So you have to then go to the history of why actually Iran would have good relations with Armenia. And once they see that, then they can understand that actually Iran's foreign policy is driven by much more by traditional nationalism and very little by religious fundamentalism.
And of course, June 2013, presidential elections in Iran.
Definitely.
How much of that policy, foreign, domestic, economic, nuclear, will in fact be affected by change of person?
It won't, because all the high decisions are made by the leader, supreme leader. And so Ahmadinejad really was never a player in the foreign policy. I think whatever happens is basically it would be at the top level. And the elections, I don't think will be any surprises, because they're going to control who runs. And the only people who will be able to run are very conservative, but not of Ahmadinejad's populist conservative stripes. There would be probably sort of more conservative, less conservative, slightly liberal conservative, and which result will be very boring elections and very light participation.
Except that the last time around, it wasn't boring at all.
That's because the surprise, they thought Ahmadinejad was going to have an easy victory. They were very confident, so they permitted people who had a much more liberal. Actually, when the election started, they weren't really seen as very liberal, but during the campaign,
given the comparison,
it basically snowballed overnight, because there was so much resentment and desire for reform that you just had a mass movement basically in 2 weeks. And I think the regime has learned from that they're not going to let even someone who would be slightly reformist to actually compete. Because if they do that, then you could also have another sort of revival of a green movement. So
false expectations.
Yes. So this time they'll basically run very sort of faceless, pretty dull conservative candidates.
Because we don't read Iranian, Persian, Farsi, it's difficult to really understand what the public discourse is in Iran in the run-up to the election. There's 2-3 months left. What is it? Is there an expectation of more choice, higher expectations? Is there a discourse that may be different from what the leaders are planning?
I think on the sensitive issues, the newspapers are really not able to discuss it. So what any friction there is, you see in the newspapers, is really between different conservatives. And therefore it's really hard to tell in the public mood what issues are really driving people. For instance, obviously inflation is a real daily problem, but how far people blame the government for that, how much they blame the sanctions, it's hard to tell.
Who do you blame?
Both. There's been a lot of government incompetence, especially on financial, but obviously the sanctions have had a very bad effect. And of course, I think the government, by first of all saying, well, the sanctions will have no effect on us, we're very so strong and so on, have got caught themselves up in their own rhetoric.
They're cornered. If it's not the sanctions' fault, so whose is it?
Yeah. And also, actually, the government at one time claimed, well, the U.S. will never succeed in having sanctions. And that clearly has not proved to be true.
The place of minorities in Iran is something that has never really appeared to be a problem. The size of the Armenian minority of Iran has certainly decreased over the years, but they are not treated any differently, it seems, than the Iranian population itself. Is that a conscious decision, or is that just how Iranian politics goes? Because you can't say that about any of the other countries in the region.
Yeah, no, I think it's not just with Armenians. I think the Iranian policy towards the minorities they recognize, so it includes Armenians, Jews, Zardoshtis, has been very correct. So I wouldn't call it persecution. It's not either going out of their way to help, but it's very correct. The Baha'i situation is very different because they don't consider them as legitimate minority. So on the whole, the Armenian community has done quite well. It's true, large numbers have left, but that was because of change in U.S. immigration laws. It provided people with the opportunity to go. But I think there's still about 100,000 Armenians in the country. And I think they are, in a way, I think considered better, treated better than the other minorities, even the Zoroastrians. And one could go into a long history of why Armenia and Iran have this cultural affinity. After all, we belong to the same culture, although neither of them recognizes it.
One last question. Armenia vis-a-vis Iran. What is Armenia doing right? What is it doing wrong?
Well, I think so far, from what I could see, Armenia seems to be doing a good policy of not becoming too pro-American in that way that would alienate Iran, but at the same time actually trying to talk to the United States as well as Iran. And I think if things improve, Armenia could act as actually a go-between between the two, because obviously Armenia is friends on both sides.
Thank you, Professor Ervand Abrahamian of the City University of New York, about Iran, our neighbor, and a very important neighbor, about whom we'll be talking the rest of the year because presidential elections are coming up. Thank you for following us on CivilNet.